Hello again, I'm back with another review. I've been playing a Batman game recently, Batman Arkham Origins, which is the third in the Batman Arkham series. Came out in 2013, but I skipped over it back when it was released. I think the impression I had of it at the time was that it was just a filler entry. It wasn't developed by the original developer, Rocksteady. It was developed by one of the internal teams at Warner Brothers, I think Warner Brothers Montreal. It still uses Rocksteady's technology, their game engine, their same design principles and everything. It just wasn't actually developed by them. But it turned out okay, I think, after all. So it was a recent Batman film, the Robert Pattinson Batman movie recently that made me want to go back and play a sort of earlier Batman game, a game set in the early years of Batman. So this is a prequel. It's set during Batman's second year of fighting crime in Gotham City. That said, however, I expected something a bit more, I don't know, primitive, just something a bit different, something to set it apart from the other games. But it's almost exactly the same as Arkham City, Arkham Asylum. Batman's still got all the same high-tech gadgets. They're pretty much the same. The detective vision works the same way. The combat works the same way. Traversing around the city using the grapnel and the cape is the same. You even have the Batwing, the aircraft for travelling around. So it's not really that much different. A lot of the same characters appear, just sort of younger versions. They got different voice actors in for some of them. Troy Baker now plays the voice of the Joker instead of Mark Hamill. I assume they got them in because they're younger and maybe their voices would sound a bit younger, but actually they just kind of sound the same anyway. So, like, why bother? Why not just get Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy back? I don't know. Yeah, so we get to see Batman meeting Joker for the first time. You know, Jim Gordon's still a police captain. He's not commissioner yet. There's no Robin. There's no Nightwing. But otherwise, there's nothing really to it to differentiate it from the other time period. It's just a Batman game. It's just, instead of being set in a sort of asylum or a boarded off part of the city, it's set across a much sort of larger area of Gotham City. They've set the game during Christmas Eve, so it's got a lovely wintry feel, which is completely inappropriate this time of year. And the story is a character called Black Mask has put a bounty on Batman's head. You have to face off against these 8 powerful assassins. While this is going on, Gotham City is under police lockdown, which is why there's no public out on the streets, just crooks and crooked cops. So much like Arkham City, Origins takes place in exterior and interior locations. There's no Batmobile, there's no driving around or anything like that, which they had in Arkham Knight. There's not really any roads at all, it's just streets and buildings and rooftops and things. So you generally just swoop around, grapple around, looking for things to find, looking for crimes going on, or follow the objective marker to continue the story. Indoors, it's pretty much business as usual. It's the usual mix of air vents and hackable doors and breakable walls and classic stone gargoyles to perch on. And for me, the best parts of the game, I think, are the sort of Predator stealth sections where you have a room full of armed goons, and you have to take them all out without them seeing you. And as you use gadgets and stealth to render them unconscious one after the other, the rest of them gradually start going insane with fear and start jumping and shooting at every little noise. It can be very satisfying. And over time, of course, they get harder and harder. You get more enemies with better weapons. They get night vision goggles so they can see you perching on the gargoyles. They booby trap them sometimes with proximity mines. They have jammers that block your detective vision. Those are annoying. You've got to take those out before you can kind of see what you're doing. So it gets harder as it goes, and that's always quite good. The combat generally, not the stealth combat, but the actual sort of brawling in big crowds, it's been one of the more sort of fluid and fun aspects of the Arkham games since the first one. I think the animation is really good, where the way Batman links his attacks and counter-attacks together is really very smooth and very clever. You can really feel every punch, and of course it ends with a slow motion knockout blow when the last enemy is beaten. There are a few ways to knock enemies out for good with a finishing blow. Unfortunately, I find that all of these clever finishing blows require time to use, and you just don't have the time. You're always surrounded by large numbers of thugs attacking you from all sides, and I found I was always interrupted in the middle of doing a finishing move so that I couldn't do it. On the other hand, you can beat most enemies just by using counterattacks again and again until they stay down. So essentially you're punished for trying to do anything more fancy than just counterattack the entire way through, aside from the special enemies that need, certain techniques to take them down. I'm sure this was probably the case in the previous Batman games, but it's only here that I've particularly noticed it. So outside of story progression, you can do side missions, such as preventing crimes in progress. Just follow the marker towards them, and generally involves beating up a load of people. You can find informants for Enigma, aka the Riddler, or weapon drug stashes for the Penguin, which also involves beating up a lot of people. Or you can solve murders, which usually ends with beating up a load of people. The murder solving, I think, is the most interesting. I think this was the first time that the detective vision was used for crime scene reconstruction. So it allows you to sort of scan evidence and then rewind fast forward through a 3D recreated version of events, which then gives you a lead to the killer. This was used really, really well in the VR game, Arkham VR, which came out a few years later, and I think Arkham Knight used it as well. So I guess Rocksteady saw what Warner Brothers Montreal did, assuming that was their idea for doing crime scene reconstruction, and they ran with it. So, good on them. Speaking of Enigma, the Riddler, before he became the Riddler, I guess. I don't know, he's called Enigma in this. He's once again left loads of collectibles and destructible things around the city. And finding them requires a bit of effort, a bit of thought, a bit of puzzle solving. It's nothing too strenuous. Sometimes you can't do it because you don't have a particular upgrade or gadget or whatever, and you might not know that at the time, so it can be a little bit frustrating. I've played a few of these games now. I never find all of the Riddler trophies. I found most of them, I think, in Arkham Knight. I just can't be bothered to do it all again. It's just a bit mundane. Some of the side missions were a little bit glitchy as well. Like a couple of times an informant I was looking for surrendered, but I couldn't interrogate him. The button prompt never appeared. So he was just standing there going, "No, please, I give up, don't hurt me." And like, "Nope, sorry, I can't do anything." So I had to abandon that and come back to it. And finally, although this is a game from 2013, I still struggle to run it perfectly on my computer. I mean, yes, my computer is old, I know it's old, I need a new one, fine. But I meet the minimum specs easily for this game, and I wouldn't have expected the sort of stuttering that I got here. Particularly running the game from a solid state drive. But moving between rooms, moving between locations, jumping out of the Batwing to fast travelling, often just looks like a slideshow. It just stutters and stutters. It's crazy. I haven't seen anyone else complaining about that specific issue, so I don't know whether it's just me. There's been a few complaints about the DirectX 11 implementation, so I disabled DirectX 11 and that helped a little bit, but then you don't get all the fancy debris flying around and all the other stuff going on, the physics stuff. So I don't know what was going on there. Yeah, just had a bit of trouble running it smoothly. But other than that, I mean, it's fine. It's a decent Batman game. I think the combat is good. The storyline is quite good. It's fine. It's not up to Rocksteady's standards. It feels a little bit glitchy in places, but generally I thought it was fine. I think the main problem with it is just not very original. There's nothing much new there other than the crime scene reconstruction thing, which I think is quite good. There's nothing else new there. It's just they've taken Rocksteady's idea and just come up with another Batman game. I guess they needed another Batman game that year, while Rocksteady were working on the next gen one. Warner Brothers Montreal stepped in to make this. I could have done without it, wouldn't have missed it if I didn't play it, but it was fine. But wait, there's more. because I've also been playing Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate, which is a bit of a mouthful. But this one runs much more smoothly on my PC, which is to be expected, as it was originally a handheld game, released on the Vita and the 3DS. Now, as was common at the time, the handheld version was released alongside the console and PC versions, but it was an entirely different game, made by a different developer with different technology. But then it was later re-released on consoles and PC as the deluxe edition a few months later. Blackgate is predominantly a side-scrolling game. Your movement is limited to left and right, but within that constraint there is scope to move around the screen and change direction where the level design allows. Many of the mechanics featured in the main Arkham Origins game are translated to work in 2 dimensions, or 2.5 dimensions anyway, such as grappling, gliding, fighting, crawling through vents, scanning for clues, detective vision, and so on. These work well enough, but the combat can sometimes be frustrating as you can't utilise space in the same way and you don't have quite the same moves. The stealth is also a little bit woolly and imprecise, and the predator sections, of which there aren't many, is horribly simplified. But that aside, I think Blackgate works better when it focuses on its strengths, and that is being a tightly focused Metroidvania style game. If you don't know what a Metroidvania game is, it's a style of game, a genre of game named after the Metroid series and the Castlevania series. In this case, as you explore the districts of Blackgate Prison, you encounter obstacles or barriers that require new abilities to get past, which sends you back and forth through the prison. There's a small thrill associated with picking up some new gadget like an electric batarang or horizontal zip line or some explosive gel, and then remembering all the places you passed on the way where you can use it. And because the game doesn't have large open environments or side quests or random crimes and riddles to solve, it's a much more focused game, and I would say more compelling and addictive as a result. It is perhaps even a better game than Arkham Origins, despite being a much simpler game, or it is at least a more interesting one. You see, where Origins played it safe, stuck to the formula, Blackgate was forced to do something different, and I appreciate that. But you can tell that this was originally a handheld game. The interface has clearly been designed for smaller screens with large text, large buttons. The budget was probably insufficient to produce animated cutscenes, so instead you've got comic-style drawn cutscenes with voices. In-game, while characters are speaking, their mouths don't move, which is something you probably wouldn't notice if you were playing it on a small portable, but on the PC, on a high-res screen, it's kind of apparent. And the enemies disappear a few seconds after being knocked out as well, which I don't know if that's a technical issue or a design issue. But these are minor things. I think more of an issue is just in the very nature of navigating what has been created as a 3D environment, but with 2D gameplay. See, this is really a 2.5D game, if you can accept such a term as a real thing, because both the camera and the character change orientation while you're moving through the prison. And this does mean that the map screen can be disorienting, difficult to pass when you're viewing it, and you may end up going in the wrong direction on occasion, as I did. I think the game could also do with a fast travel system, especially near the end when you're mopping up the last few collectibles and so on. Overall, though, I think Arkham Origins Blackgate is a fascinating and enjoyable game, and I'm glad they ported it to the PC. So that about wraps this up. I'm not going to give it a score, I don't do scores, but what I am going to do is ranking. Ha ha ha. So, in order from worst to best, though just to be clear, I do like all the Batman Arkham games. I think they are at least good, and some of them are very good. But at the bottom, I'm going to put my least favourite, Arkham Origins. I think it's just a little bit too samey, and it's a little bit glitchy and doesn't feel as polished as some of the other ones. Slightly above that, I'm going to put Origins Blackgate, because I think the Metroidvania genre is an enjoyable one, and I think it works well with the character of Batman in that. I think it's just a slightly more interesting game. Above that, I'm going to put Arkham City. Arkham City was Rocksteady's second Batman Arkham game, and they expanded the level out into a sort of open city environment, a partial city environment, and gave you new ways of navigating it. I think in the process of doing that, they diluted some of that interesting claustrophobic level design and exploration that they had in their first game. So I don't think it's as good as their first game, but it does have some very good boss fights. Above that, I'm going to put Arkham Knight. This is their next gen entry, so it's still a big open city. You get to drive the Batmobile around. The Batmobile sections are a bit on the tedious side, which is why I don't rate this higher, but still very, very good. And above that, I'm going to put Arkham Asylum, which is Rocksteady's original Batman Arkham game. To my mind, that's still one of the best. I think it has pretty much perfect blend of everything. They knocked it out of the park on their first go. But one more entry above that, and this is a strange one, but this is Arkham VR, which is a short but thoroughly interesting, pretty incredible Batman experience. To be honest, if you've got a VR kit, either on PC or PlayStation, and you've not played this before, give it a go with the motion controllers. I cannot stress enough. It is really thoroughly excellent. So there we go. That's my ranking. So no score, just a list of preference. I'll tell you what I'm going to do though. If you like Origins Blackgate and you want something similar, check out a game called Shadow Complex. That's another sort of 3D, 2D Metroidvania title. And if you like Batman, you may also like Mark of the Ninja, which is a stealth game. Probably actually my favourite stealth game of all time. It's absolutely excellent and I cannot recommend that enough. So that's all for this video. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I may do some more of these review type things if I get time. Please like and subscribe and all the rest of it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.